Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Art in Conversation with Farrin. It's a beautiful day, and we are here today with Nova's former president, Natalia Koren. If I pronounce your last name correctly, you can correct me, Natalia. Natalia is a contemporary artist based in New York City. And as I found in her statement, she's working with environmental clean material and methods in painting, printmaking, and sculpture. We are so glad to have you here today with us, Natalia. Please welcome to our conversation, first of all, and we would like to hear about you, who you are, and a little bit about your background.
Thanks, Farrin. Thanks, Nava, for having me over. Finally, I feel that I don't have to be on a Zoom as a president. I could just speak as an artist. And in this presentation, I prepared my work, which is most recent. So I will tell you only what I'm working on now, because it is always changing. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and in my early 20s, my family came here, and I continued my work here. I graduated from Parsons, then I studied printmaking at the School of Visual Arts, and I continued to study sculpture at Art Students League of New York, and also do some printmaking at the same time. I feel like, for me, working in several mediums gives me freedom of expression of what interests me at the moment. For example, if I work on a figure, I have to do it on all possible mediums, not all possible, but I would have to do 2D and 3D, and I would like to just basically take this idea and look at my idea from different angles. So therefore, it looks like I'm doing a lot of things, but it really is the same thing.
It's wonderful. I mean, I saw at least some of your work in exhibition and online. They are really inspiring and interesting. One thing actually I really like in your statement, you said, the unknown is what inspired me and keep me going. And I said, like, that's really, really nice way of put, like, what inspired you. So that's really interesting. And I know you like to work with different medium and technique. Would you please explain about those medium and different technique you work with?
Sure. Well, it has to do a lot with us in theater in order of appearance. So every person appears on the stage, and we have to get used to that character. So for me too, first I studied painting, then I studied printmaking, then now sculpture. And this is how I want to see myself at this moment. That's why I put my name on top. So it's just sort of a movement and light and compositional dynamic and curvature that has interested me at this moment in this past couple of years, actually since COVID. So this is the newest work, and I've done it over the, quite recently. So this composition just shows that how this drawing actually was made directly without any sketch. It's pretty large. It's 66 by 30. It's a triptych compiled of 3 full sheets paper. And I just basically channel these lines. They just come to me and I record them. This is where I want to be with all my work. Unfortunately, it is not always the case, and it cannot be always the case. So that is my goal, to sort of record what comes to me intuitively. But behind that there is a lot of bad work and things that I don't show, because it's the process, right? You only record the best of what you can take. So
is this a painting?
No, this is actually, like I said, this is just this is my inspiration that came. It was completely improvisational, and it was done in pigment markers and pastel. Hold on. It's called watercolor stick. So it's a pigment stick and some of the markers. Markers have thinner lines, more smooth line, and when the line appears to be rough, those are the pigment sticks that I used on the wall. I put this, and then my hand was just moving. You could see the gesture is there.
I mean, I know this movement and light is there are two concepts that you follow a lot, and not only on your painting, but I saw them on your sculpture too. The same movement and the same type of like playing with movement and light. Would you explain how you apply movement and light in your work? I mean, I saw some of
Right.
other your work also.
Yeah,
I will come back to this eventually, but I just want to show some of your sculpture, which is follow the same method, which we just saw in that painting.
Well, movement represents life, of course, and light enables light to flourish, to grow, and also light in its the meaning also means enlightenment. So growth towards enlightenment and moving towards it is basically what life is about. This is how I see it. So whether it's literal light on a painting or translucent work that light shines through, or reflective work where metallic surface, so shiny surface reflects the light versus the deep areas, such as on this slide, that absorb light, that shows sort of duality, and at the same time unifying element of life that we have always see around us,
Yeah.
kind of yin and yang kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so since we are here in this sculpture, what material you made this?
Well, these are models. These are great ideas, but these have not been manifested as sculptures yet. Those are very small scale models, which I did during pandemic out of toilet paper. My statement was, since I didn't have over big supply of toilet paper, I had just enough. We didn't buy more than usual, and it was fine. So I just painted them, some of the tubes of the in cookie jars, which are lined with the iridescent foil lining, and also I used acrylic paint here to cover some of the different diameters of these portals. And I thought, in this unknown space, as we were in the spring and summer 2020, we need to sort of channel. We found ourselves in a totally unknown situation, all of us, and it felt to me like life is more multidimensional. So these portals represent some kind of other ways of thinking, seeing, feeling, and this composition just came about. I intend to do them in metal someday, not yet there, but these models I like because they stand for something, actually as they are, they stand for toilet paper mania. But,
so you always often make model before making your sculpture?
No, just in this case, because I was sort of, I not always make models. For sculpture, I usually make a drawing or I have it in my head. But this just came about, and I was playing with them. This is not a serious thing. It was my thoughts were serious, but the result is it's still fluid. I still modify them. When I make them on a larger scale, I will probably play with them as well.
Okay, so it came to your mind, and then you right away you start to make a model one day.
Yeah, instead of drawing, I thought that would, because I just thought this toilet paper cores, they're just so dynamic, and everybody was talking about this was the subject of conversation, and I thought, why not?
So. Right, let me go back to where we were. Okay, so these are, I know you have a huge inspiration from nature, and you often work with nature and environment. Would you please just explain some of this work which nature inspired you?
Of course, I also I would like to remind you that I'm very trained as a very realistic painter, but there is always, and I always go back to my studies, my roots, my original training, and sometimes this is a sucker on the left in my backyard. The one bamboo is also growing in my home, and I just painted those. I just studied the plants, really studied them. They're not really painting or drawing, they're study of movement, of interlocking lines, of composition in this case, right? So from this, you could clearly see where the idea of curvature that interests me and movement comes from. And also, of course, I studied a lot of works of art and oriental paintings and so on. But these are my sort of sketches, so to speak, that give me a feeling, an idea, and from that I can abstract my work. because I do like to work abstract, but I take nature as is and I stylize it in my own way as I see fit when I am expressing certain idea. Color on the left and the shape on the right.
Yeah, of the trees, yes. It's
And here I'd like to, as it shows here on top, it says that I was studying movement, curvature, and gestures in trees, in landscape, in human figures. I go often to live drawing class where I just study figures. As you could see, I use brush and ink sometimes. The two pieces on the right, on the bottom, they are woodcuts based on my sketches. So they are a little bit more stiff and they're not as fluid as the pen and ink drawings, but they're stylized in a certain way to show tension and also the movement and play of black and white.
I mean, I see that, again, this is one of your studying of movement, and I see how they are, like the movement of human and the movement of those three, how like, similar, right?
Well, that's
And,
yes.
yeah, I mean, by putting this next to each other, you can see this, like, almost that's the statement we always said, we are part of the nature. We are nature. And you see how, like, for example, this movement of this and movement of these trees, right? How they are very, very much similar, right? And that brings us to that statement, we are part of the nature. And that's very, like, that's what nature inspired you.
Yeah.
To create this movement of human as well as nature, which is quite similar. And I know you work a lot with sculpture, printmaking, and you just show us you do calligraphy too. So you are a lady which you don't afraid to experiment. And you love to experiment new things. That's very fascinating.
I think this piece that we're looking at now actually shows how the hand gesture and the movement of dancers and calligraphy and the movement of the chisel for the woodcutting tool on the wood. The piece of wood is on the right. The one on the left is a silk screen with several colors. So all of this mechanical processes also involving my hand moving a certain way, besides the internal composition that is also very dynamic. So it is to me all the same in a way. It is all united to the hand of the artist, to the breath, to the movement, to the swirling dervishes, to the dance, and so it stands for me.
Yeah, so this is Rumi, right? This is based on that.
Well, this is actually called Celebrate. This is called the dance of the dances of the world. I think sometimes I call it, that series is called One Dance for Many Dancers. So because we all, each culture has a dance or some kind of, a dance. And so I put some of the, handpicked some of the cultures that are represented here to show that we're all united by that universal movement as the planets are rotating, as the dervishes are spinning, imitating the same movement. And so each culture within its own tradition have the beautiful movement that are symbolic and that represent the belief of that culture. But the point is that everything is about movement.
Exactly.
So, and that's my twisted ways on the bottom also represents that even the geometric object to be twisted, so as human torso with the sort of energy flows of the chakras of the our energetic centers within each person.
Yeah, this is ceramic, right? Because I know
Yes.
you work a lot with ceramic. Very interesting to see, like, the this cross culture, and it's almost every culture they are sharing movement, and then you see how they are related and how they are connected. In geometry of movement, so everything is about movement in your work.
Yeah, in these sketches, I studied the literal movement, and we had a wonderful model who had very geometric sort of movement, very sort of angular movement. Some models are more fluid and some more angular. So that model inspired me, the body language of this model inspired me that the movement of the person reminded me really of my roots, that is Russian constructivism. And so I put some elements of the early Russian avant-garde movements and combined it with the figure, so to accentuate the angles. And so I made that series that was called Geometry of Movement, based on a figure and geometric shapes that it reminds me of.
One thing actually was a question for me. Has your work changed over the time? I mean, what type of work do you start at the beginning as artist? Did you start with sculpture?
No. I studied as a traditional painter. So I studied painting, drawing, and composition, and it was very academic, in the most academic sense you can think of. And then I always had a flavor for abstract, for simplification, for abstraction, really, as a general, because abstraction has a language that is more universal. It's not tied to a specific technique or a specific culture, since I share two cultures within me and interest in many more cultures. So I always wanted to find a universal language. And I think the abstract art is that language to me. Music is also that language, but visual language, it, of course, it's very subjective, but to me, it feels like I can express a lot more through the simplified ways of seeing, as opposed to being part of a particular school of painting.
Yes. Okay. So you do what you see, and you like to experiment, and experiment new thing, and
this is further. This idea is sort of goes into black, white, and red. You could see the red square and the black square in a way. Again, working with the angular model, and some women who were dancers, and their body language is very different from the male model. So there is a curvature, but in the work on the left, which is called Ascending Portals, it represents a spiral that has curvature and angular geometric shapes, and also swirls. And it's done on a pearlescent shimmering surface of many nuanced colors. You cannot always see them in photographs. So the red and black are really flat, and they're not shiny, they're opaque, but the rest of the painting is shimmering, which is better to see in person, of course. So that was representing the air and a shimmering sort of space around us, and something very, very concrete, very prominent that spirals around it.
And where this model came? I mean,
this is part of those models. It has red background if it looks good, but it's the same thing. It's portals, they're swirls, they're ascending kind of structures with many variations, with many portals, as opposed to the doors.
I mean, is there a connection between the technique you choose to imply and the subject you want to work? Like, for example, when you see something and you really want to do something with that, how you choose? You want to paint it, you want to carve it, you want to make sculpture out of it. Is this like, a connection?
The idea is usually comes to me intuitively, and in order for me to manifest it, to put into form, I try different things until I say that really represents my idea. And sometimes in trying different ways to manifest it, I come across, different mediums, sculptures, painting, collage, printmaking. And I like to mix them all up because I'm after expressing what my idea is.
So therefore, when you see something, you already know what you want to do with it. So you try painting, and then you try sculpture of that, and you see.
Yes and no, because I don't know it for sure. I have just a taste or a feeling. It's so elusive that I'm trying to sort of elaborate on it for myself. So I understand what this idea is, or I would like to bring it out into more visible plane, and therefore I have to go through all these processes. This is the same plate that was done. It's actually an etching, a viscosity print. It was done from the same soft ground plate which is on the left, and then I experimented with different colors. And you see how the same plate would give you different results if it inked differently. This,
what medium is this?
This is etching.
Okay, okay.
It's a series of 5 etchings. Okay, and sometimes I love history of art, and I study history of art all my life, and still I'm studying in the process. So Laocoon was a Laocoon, what did you say? Was a sculpture that was pretty tragic. And the sculpture was in Hermitage when I was growing up, and I just remembered how beautiful it was. I didn't really know when I was a young child the story, the tragic story behind it. And so that is why I never perceived it as tragic, because I just perceived it as beautiful, most dynamic thing. And the body of the serpent in the sculpture, I guess it was in my subconscious somehow. So when I was thinking of one end of not the sculpture you see on the wall here, I was really imitating, without knowing it, that serpent and that dynamic. And when it was done in white, I thought, oh, that is, I know what it is. It is Laocoon. So it reminded me of Laocoon after I manifested it. So sometimes, see, we don't know what we're doing until we finish, until I finish, and then I see, oh, that reminds me of the sculpture. But of course, to begin with, that was my starting point, but I was not aware of it at the time.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Greek Hellenistic art are all also about emotion and movement and light and playing with this. That's why you related to that, because you also working with light and movement and emotion, and how you create a piece of art from movement and light and emotion. Yeah, I see the connection between these two.
But I think, as I pointed out, it comes from the early childhood. The work of art that was exposed in Hermitage, and when I traveled in Europe and here in the United States, I always visit museums and I always look at works of art. And now I look at it on Instagram and on the internet. I see things that I could not possibly visit, but I could always take it in. So the visuals always sort of stay with me. I inhale it, and sometimes it comes out as interpretation in my work. But of course, the foundation is what I see in the culture that I've been exposed to, and that is really also part of my inspiration besides nature.
Interesting. How large is this piece?
Not that large, about 20 inches, 20 by 18. Okay. 24 maybe, 24 by 18 by 5 maybe. It's a relief, it's a wall relief. And actually I have another version. After this I have another slide that is, another version of it, but in a bonded bronze. So here you could see clearly, in this revision, you could see the connection with the calligraphy, with Arabic calligraphy, which is, I find, most fascinating and beautiful. And somehow, when it's not white, when it's in bronze patina, it did remind me of something else.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But again, I didn't start with the calligraphy. I guess it was all subconsciously it was there, but I did not imitate it. Only afterwards I found these pictures afterward, and I thought they kind of related somewhat.
And I know now you start to work with calligraphy too, right? In this movement.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, part of my New Year resolution. I just
sharing. Maybe we can see a little bit of your calligraphy. Wow, interesting.
Some of this. Some I do in English.
Are they poem and we said they're mostly poem, right?
Some of them are poems, some of them are wisdoms, some of them are my own sayings, and some of them I sometimes take with inspiration. Rumi, he's my always go-to poet, and so yeah.
Wow, interesting, right? I can see the connection between all this and as you said, the movement, right? In calligraphy, like this, the
Yeah.
name of God, actually, alhamdulillah, it's
Yes.
in all this, in within this, or the Hellenistic Greek sculpture, which is,
Right.
they are all about movement. So,
well, here it says that the magic of calligraphy, which I consider sculpture as poems and calligraphy sometimes in this case, the magic of calligraphy is in the uniqueness of each scribe's handwriting. There is a breath in every stroke, an emotion in a letter, and there is a hope in every message. So
that's true.
That's sort of.
That's true. That's true. And again, you have another sculpture, which is, you put the inspiration. What is that? Is that a sculpture also made by?
Yeah, this is Michelangelo's Crouching Boy. Sometimes it's in Hermitage in St. Petersburg. I remember the sculpture since I was a child. And when I was making my morphing band, I didn't think of a figure at all, but it just somehow, when it was created, a lot of people commented that it reminded me them of a figure. The sculpture is actually behind me. And I thought, oh, really? I didn't think of it that way. And then I thought maybe my subconscious inspiration, I'm psychoanalyzing myself here, was from the Crouching Boy by Michelangelo, which is a fairly small sculpture. And it's carved marble, but the tension of the body and the way the bodies are all together. He's looking at his foot, and he's taking out a little splinter from his foot, as the story says, in Michelangelo case. So I guess that the tension and expansion of his back and the musculature on the back could be also interpreted as a separate bands, in my view. I mean, afterwards, of course, when I was doing it, I had something else.
So you made this, and then after that you saw that connection.
Honestly, I did this for this presentation so people could understand my process a little bit more, because I couldn't just come here and say my work is all intuitive. I can't explain it. So I just wanted to give some reference that these references are there, but yes. I do not work from them directly. I actually just wanted to illustrate how my mind works, my brain works, or maybe something else that I'm not covering, but just want to be understood.
Yeah, well, interesting. Actually, we see the connection, actually, how that sculpture, I didn't see it in person from every angle, but you see, like, the figures. And when you look at this, you see, like, how connected that your sculpture in that sculpture. And this, one of my question actually was, which before we finish, I should ask you, although, like, I see there is a painting and there is a sculpture. Do you have often, like, when you make a sculpture, you paint a sculpture as well?
Well, this is exactly,
and then you turn it into a sculpture?
It is exactly the case. I started this painting again with intuitive lines, and it's pretty large. It's 60 by 48, pretty large painting, and it's done on board. So I just done this line work on board, and then I was adding color and tone, and then at the same time I was working on sculpture, which is celluloid sculpture over metal armature, and I want to kind of express the same movement. And then I use the paint, from the palette of this painting on the sculpture, and I use the celluloid from the sculpture on the painting. You could see these large inclusions, the three-dimensional, but actually reliefs. They are connected to, they're very rough. They're connected to the board. They stuck really, really well. And the black areas are collaged. So they're flat and absolutely, they look like black holes. They have total flatness of color, and everything else kind of shimmers. And some things come out, like these white elements, you could see them as being a little bit coarse. So those are three-dimensional relief on that piece, and on the bottom as well. So this why I put these two pieces together, because they physically related to each other, and they painted at the same time.
Yeah, because when I saw it right away, I said, I don't know if you did a painting first, sculpture first. but they are from one series, and one two-dimensional and one three-dimensional, which is makes it interesting to see.
Yeah. I'll hear more of those playful portals. I have nothing to say about them except they're made from toilet paper, painted with gesso and acrylic paint and tempera paint. Just, this is an experiment that I have to work on further, but I thought they're colorful and fun.
Yeah. Amis, I just want to quick show your website, because I know you have a wonderful website and with many of your work. I want everyone to see that you have a lot of work or your work available in the website. And if anyone want to see more of your work, they can come here and see, because during our conversation, of course, we don't have much time. So they can see more of your beautiful work here in your website. So I know our time almost we are at the end of our conversation. Although we have so many more to discuss, let me just scan through some of your work, and if you have anything you want to share, you can share with us before we end our conversation.
Like I said, I'd like to say that focusing inward is sort of what I do. I focus inward and I look at my own internal processes of light, and I move with my intuition wherever it takes me. Okay. And as I change as my ideas change, I have a change of heart, as they say. So I only change my ideas, techniques, color choice, because I really deeply feel about it, because my heart is telling me this is the right, I feel this is the right thing at this moment. So that's all I can say, really.
Yeah. And you know, this again, different.
Yeah, this is just, I wanted to explain the color choice. It's a jazzy piece for the exhibition of Now Jazzy. It was a while ago, it was just beginning of pandemic. I painted this, and I guess in mind, I had the palette of the beautiful Russian icons that have this intense ultramarine blue and gold, and the vivacious highlights on the big brass band when they come and they're shone by the sun, and they have these beautiful uniforms, and the sound is so robust. So that all of this inspired this painting. Again, I took this reference afterwards to prepare this presentation. So it all came to me in some other form, which I was trying to visualize and articulate on the piece. Yeah. This harmony is next to me. It's a bronze piece. It is also about movement and curvatures, and almost touching, but not really. This experimental paintings, they for many ways. It's also the sort of calligraphic and some are sculptural. The piece on the right is just how they come to me. It's done on a large piece of paper, 22 by 30. It's a gesture drawing pretty much with some kind of, I think it was a brush that my hand was moving. This is a very large painting that's behind me. It's called Silver Lining, and the other things are sort of what led me to that. Silver Lining, it's a piece that is hopeful that every sad situation has always silver lining. So we have to remain optimistic, and things are moving. There are no, nothing really stale or static in the universe. So if you go through a rough time, it will change too.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And this is also.
And this is a happy summer. That was last summer when we thought everything would be over. I went out, I was swimming in the ocean, and I took in a lot of sunshine, and this kind of lines came to me, and I was very happy until, yeah.
Yeah, so Amis, this brought us to the end of our conversation. Do you have any final word for our guest today, Natalia?
Well, I think I would like to say that every artist knows this already, that staying true to yourself is the best advice one can give themselves. So I'm not in a position to give an advice, but for me that had been very important to remember who I am, what my mission is. And mission of art for me is beauty and harmony, is to elevate and to make people happy by showing them that, like I said, even in darker times, there is always a change of heart. There is always hope. And this is what I want to project for my art, really.
Yeah. And so this is, there is Natalia's website as well as Nova's email if you are interested more to learn more, and you can reach out to her. And I want to thank you, Natalia, for your time. I know you're a busy lady, and we really appreciate sharing your work and your life with us. And I want to end our conversation with what you said in your statement. Again, the unknown is what inspires us and keep us going. Thank you very much, Natalia.
Thank you, Farrin. Thank you.